What do icy waterfalls, greasy floors, and light stealing smoke have in common? They're all hazards. Welcome to the Lair of Secrets. In this episode, we're talking about Shadowdark hazards, the things that drown you, crush you, blind you, and steal your memories, and more. What is a hazard? Ken, you brought this up as a topic to me a little while back. What are hazards? Why are hazards?
So I struggled with hazards in Shadowdark because they're very open-ended and there's no rules governing them. But what are they? So I mean, they kind of seems kind of self-explanatory, but we're talking about the environmental effects like quicksand, rushing water, falling debris. There are things you might be able to mitigate or evade, but per the rules, there's often no way to permanently defeat them or disable them. And so core rulebook goes into some light amount of detail on page 115 and divides them into basically three types of hazards. You've got your movement types, which are going to slow or stop your movement. So quicksand, concrete, rapidly freezing ice. They also have examples of caltrops, tar fields, maybe a steep incline. Something's going to slow you down. Then damage. These are things that are going to expose you to ongoing damage while you're in the vicinity of the hazard. So examples of that would be acid pools, or presumably acid rain, fantasy acid rain that just dissolves things. Lava, pummeling hail, which I have practical experience on the trail. Don't do it. It sucks. And then weaken, which is sapping your physical capabilities, mental grit, or resources. So stuff like blinding smoke, memory stealing, something that's going to extinguish your light source. So it's messing with your mental and physical resources. And so the rules also note that you can combine these to create, particularly difficult and dangerous threats. So like you might combine movement and damage with to have exploding rocks that do damage to you, but then loose debris afterwards that causes issues with movement. You could combine movement and weaken, so you could have perhaps grasping vines that reach out at your characters and slow them down, but then release sleep-inducing spores, which weaken you. And then damage plus weaken, icy water, which is going to do maybe damage to you as you start experiencing hypothermia and stuff like that, but it also douses your light sources. So then that's weakening you because you're losing a material resource. It sounds pretty good, but it doesn't give you specific stats or mechanics for the hazards, which I found kind of odd because on just the previous page, they give you stats and additional information for traps, right? They talk about damage and special effects for traps, but then hazards, it's just like, yeah, they're tough. Do mean things to your characters, right?
Yeah, and I can kind of see why, because like, how do you define a bunch of these things easily, succinctly, I should say, when it's as wild and varied as like you're having to jump from solid stone to solid stone in the caldera of a volcano for your movement side of things, and the sulfurous smell coming off is sapping your physical abilities. Having the categories makes sense to me, but yeah, initially I wasn't quite sure how to put them together. But the more that you and I have talked, the more I've thought about things like not Predator. What was the newest Predator movie where the Predator was the main character?
Badlands.
Predator Badlands. They had those pineapple-like things on stalks, which I found there are plants that look very much like that. But that's an aside. Those are also a hazard, but it would inflate and then shoot spines out at you. That was one where you and I kind of went back and forth. Is like, is that a hazard or a trap?
Yeah, that entire planet, if you haven't seen Predator Badlands, I enjoyed it. I mean, it's a PG-13 Predator movie, so it's violent, but it's not gory. And I thought it was fun. I mean, I really enjoyed Prey by the same director. But yes, the entire planet is trying to kill you. So it's a great example of hazards. And I will say, I'm coming from Dungeons & Dragons. I still have a 5e campaign. And so, the Dungeon Master's Guide has a number of different examples in both the current version and the previous version, and really scattered throughout the game since pretty much 3rd edition, where they did stat out hazards. I mean, I can remember I have a whole book of hazards for Star Wars Saga Edition, which had all kinds of crunchy mechanicalness. And so with that background, coming to Shadowdark with no mechanical stats for hazards was a bit challenging. But they did give us examples of hazards in adventures. For example, in the Lost Citadel of the Scarlet Minotaur, Room 2, Blinding Cave, is a cruel cave that blinds people when they enter with their torches. Walls, dazzling reflective, DC 12 dex when entering with a bright light, or blinded for 1d4 rounds. And oh, by the way, spoilers, there's monsters off to the side that are not affected by this that will come and eat you as you are suffering from this attack.
Belated spoiler warning, we are going to be talking about Shadowdark published modules. So if you haven't played them and you want to play them, we'll mark it, skip ahead. and forget what you just heard. You don't know.
You skip
You don't
back
know
into
which
the
room. What
chapters.
is room 2 on the map anyway? So
Yes, this is true. This is true. So anyway, but that's a pretty good example. It's something that's messing with a party from a mechanical perspective because you could be blinded, and it's also turning what is normally an advantageous thing, having a light source, into a detriment. So pretty nefarious. There's also a webbed choked cave filled with, well, webs. Left by what? Well, you'll find out. Webs are sticky, DC 12 strength to break free and move each turn. Highly flammable, so a D6 damage to stuck creatures, and it burns for 1d4 rounds, which my characters in D&D 2nd edition burned down a quarter of a city using the web spell. So this warmed my heart.
It's also one of the cruel things that you can do as a GM is you can put things that are burnable in the webs that are a treasure.
Yes, but again, you're turning an advantageous thing, your torch, into a possible detriment if you're trying to make your way through the choked webs, or you're just going to burn the webs. And then, yes, being a mean DM who put like, haha, the valuable treasure just went up in flames. But
yeah,
we're not
the
mean GMs.
Spellbook or the scroll of fireball just burned up.
Thus triggering the fireball as the magic leaves the page.
I'm not that kind of DM.
In the Hoard of the Sea Wolf King, which is a 0-level gauntlet set in the ruins of a Viking-inspired tomb from Curse Scrolls 3, which is the Great Norse one that I've used a lot for my campaign. There is a Stingbat Cave, which has tarry black mud, which is
that's
mud.
mean.
Tarry black mud.
Well, if there are also stingbats in it, that is really mean, making people move slow while they're trying to avoid death mosquitoes.
Mud. Coppery smelling stingbat guano. PCs moving at more than half speed must pass a DC Dex check or slip and fall, which then, you have the aforementioned stingbats, which must be out there somewhere, right? Arriving just in time to attack you as you fall onto the ground. And then there's the Flotsam Cave, which has towering piles of driftwood. Piles precariously stacked debris. Each time a PC touches it, it's a DC 12 Dex check, or you take 2d6 points of damage as you're crushed under a collapse.
It's like walking through a hoarder's house and with precariously balanced places.
Having been in situations where I've had to clean out houses like this, I can attest to the fact that sometimes it's a little dangerous, folks. So, yeah, so I think those are cool examples of the hazards. And so what I did, and I'll include this in the blog post, is built a hazard chart. And so what I tried to do is kind of borrow from what we saw in the traps chart and kind of assign a hazard level. There's another chart further on in the random encounters section, like when you're building a dungeon, that goes into more detail as to like basically lightweight hazards versus heavyweight hazards. And so using that, I basically said, okay, hazard level 0 through 3. Well, that's going to be like a shortfall or dense rubble. It could potentially do a deep damage, and it's going to be a DC 12 check because, again, this is going off of the DCs that we see in the 0 level and 1st level dungeon. Then hazard level 4 through 6. Well, that's going to be like collapsing walls, enfeebling magic, so potential for 2d6 points of damage. A harder DC, so hard, that would be 15. And again, these are the DCs from the Shadowdark book, so I didn't pull these completely out of thin air. And then at hazard level 7 to 9, you're talking drowning hazards, long falls, toxic gas, crushing terrain, 3d6 points of damage. The DC check goes to extreme, which is an 18. And then the last one, I just have 10, which is just kind of catastrophic, like complete cave collapse. You're not getting out. 46 points of damage. Here there be dragons, right? Just, I don't know what the DC is. As a piece, as the dungeon master, you figure it out on the fly. And
there's another term for that. Rocks fall, everybody dies.
Rocks fall, everybody dies, yes. So I think you can also, going back to the previous page, which talks about traps and does have things like triggers and damage or effect indicators, you can just steal the damage from there. So the damage there is a little bit more severe. You've got like a rolling boulder will do 2 to 8 points of damage, or 2d8 points of damage. A slicing blade could do 2d8 points of damage and sleep. So it gives you some more options to kind of mix and match if you're looking for additional inspiration.
Yeah. I'm still working on some hazards as well, and I can also understand why they didn't put it in a chart, because not all traps like do actual damage. Like the Stingbat Guano one is making people fall down,
Right.
or they're moving at half speed. So the hazard doesn't always have to do something dangerous, but because the hazard is there, something else that is dangerous can be more effective.
My take on it was, as a chart, you're picking and choosing, right? So if there's a weakness hazard, well, here's the DC, it's a 12, and there is no damage. And so that's, I think, the falling down and getting stuck is more of a weakness thing, maybe, or a movement thing. So it's not like, oh, short fall, well, it must do a D6 of damage. Well, it might be a short fall into water, but what's in the water?
Right. And maybe the water is deep enough that as you're moving through it, walking thigh deep in a lake, you're not moving nearly as fast as you would on land. That's a hazard if there is something in the water coming after you.
And it might have been in the Sea King's tomb, where they have a lake that's filled with jellyfish.
Yes, there is.
Which I have not run it for my players, but it sounds nicely fiendish.
I played in it at Origins, and it was funny. We went in, and the way it was described to us, it was like a trial by combat to become full members of the tribe that we were with, and we had to get some treasure out of there, and it's huge and expansive, but we got like a little piece of treasure for everybody, and we're like, yeah, I think we're done. We don't need to explore this whole thing. There's no reason to explore this whole thing. We're just going to leave.
Yes, right, because why stay and die?
Yes, exactly.
So kind of pulling it all together, I could see, like a geothermal vent as kind of a minor hazard. You're adventuring underground, and maybe you give the huddle. You're adventuring underground, and you give some subtle hints, like there's a little bit of smell of sulfur in the air, right, or rumbling in the ground beneath you, and then the vent erupts. Dex DC 12 check to avoid. Otherwise, you take a D8, D8, D6 of points of damage if you fail. So that's kind of basic.
You could also foreshadow it the way they do in movies, where they see a vent erupting 30 feet ahead, and now they're realizing, oh, all those weird mound things with a hole in the middle, that we should avoid those. Some of them are pretty close together.
Why are all these corpses next to all of these holes? And why are they all so scorched? If you go combined, so you could have the geothermal vent, which is going to do damage to you, plus noxious gas, which could weaken you. So we'll take geothermal vent, which is damage. So again, it's going to do some physical damage to you. So DC 12 dex check to avoid. And then, but wait, if you manage to avoid that, we've got the noxious gas, which erupts from the vent as well. You didn't see it, but what's that smell? Con DC 12 to avoid passing out for 1d4 rounds. And because you're on the ground, maybe you're taking damage from the geothermal vent you just fell into, until somebody wakes you up or you're dragged to safety.
Yeah, and you did say that if you avoid if you avoid the noxious gas for the damage, you would still possibly get the con to avoid passing out.
Oh, yes.
But
yes,
if you fail the noxious gas and take the damage, you still have to make the DC 12 and avoid passing out. So yeah, it's just bad all around.
Yeah, it's bad all around. But I think it's fun. So to me, this helped me kind of get my head around how I might use hazards in my game. I have 2 scenarios right now for my lunchtime Shadowdark campaign, and we're going to use some of those to inspire our next episode, where we're going to talk about D12 hazards for Shadowdark. There's 2 possibilities. They venture into the deep crawl, which is basically like an Underdarkish kind of adventure where they're going to find the Rat King, or try and find the Rat King. Or they go on an overland journey to Varden, which is the city to the south, to sell all their loot. They are presently planning to go to Varden because Natham, the town they're currently in, refuses to buy their stuff for reasonable prices.
Gotcha.
And they don't want to deal with the Rat King right now. And they just leveled up. And, Varden's a bigger city, more opportunities for carousing. And, oh, wait, I have this lovely new Cursed Scroll book, number 6, which has expanded carousing charts.
Yes. Yeah, I saw that. That was pretty cool. And
they
it's
will
carousing
eventually
per class as well.
Yes, which the fan created GM book I have also did something similar to that. So I'm going to need to decide which one I want to use. But I really like the idea that there's now class-specific carousing options, and I think it's going to be really fun with them being in Varden, but they have to get there. And so my campaign is set in sort of a, alternative Scandinavian north. It is deepest winter. It's almost the solstice. So there are going to be all kinds of monstrous threats out in the dark. But at the same time, there's other hazards they might encounter. It's cold, blizzards come. You get run over by reindeer. We will see next time exactly what we come up with to threaten my characters with.
Sounds good. Thanks for attending our latest Minion and Future Overlord training, everyone. Coming up in the near future, as Ken mentioned, we've got D12 Shadowdark hazards that we've created. And remember, please subscribe to the show on YouTube. We have nearly 1,000 subscribers. So thanks everyone who is a subscriber. If you're not, hit the subscribe button, please. And the like and comment and do all the engagement stuff.